Welcome to the Royal Shakespeare Company.
This is Interval Drinks, a podcast in which Royal Shakespeare Company resident artists talk to people who have inspired them over drinks.
I really recommend working at the RSC during the pandemic.
There's no audience that matches an audience of young people.
I mean, I literally left drama school thinking this will never work out.
I'm trying to flatter you, but I'm probably insulting you at the same time here.
I don't want to be less soft. I want to be vulnerable.
I want to wander around with all my emotions terrifyingly close to the surface and then monetize that.
This is why I'm doing this. This is what I was born to do. And this is why I was born to do it.
Catching up in the interval this week, Bea Webster and Charlotte Arrowsmith.
Hello, welcome to Interval Drinks, a vodcast from the Royal Shakespeare Company. I'm talking today with someone who's an incredibly inspirational actress in the deaf community. My name is Bea Webster. My surname is Bea, like this. I'm an actress, writer, theatre maker, and an activist. I have many different roles in the community. I'm talking to someone who's really inspiring. I've watched shows with her in growing up. I've seen her in Definitely Theatre. I've seen her as a deaf director and deaf actor, and I think she's amazing. I'm sure you'll all join me in welcoming Charlotte Arrowsmith, Charlie, to this podcast. I'm so excited to be talking to you today, so welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. Hello, Bea. So I'm an actor. I've been acting for, 20 years, and now I'm 40. Oof, I'm an old woman, oh dear me.
You don't look it.
So I've been doing all this for 20 years, and hopefully I'll carry on, keep going. So I've been acting for a long time. I'm also a director and a theatre facilitator. And I'm really, really passionate about encouraging young people to develop their skills, because for me, growing up, there was very few opportunities. So I'm really passionate about creating more for young people in the future. That's a brief bio.
Fantastic, short and sweet. So first I want to talk to you about the interval drinks. Have you got your drink ready, Charlie?
A cup of tea.
Excellent. And that's your preferred choice of interval drink?
Well, it depends, really. It depends on the interval or the show or my mood or the time or who I'm with. It very much depends. I don't have a fixed ritual. I'm very open.
Well, sometimes I'll just have a small drink and I get really merry. But if it's a really sad show, I need a bit of a drink to try and cheer myself up and wake up a bit afterwards. So what was the last show you watched where you had an interval drink?
Wow, I was really trying to think what show was the last show I saw. But then I actually realised that the last accessible show I saw was probably in October, during lockdown life, when everything changed. And then my friend Stephen Collins got me a ticket for a show which was called A Night in Sign. It was like an open mic event, and it had dance and poetry, all deaf performers. And Nadim Islam, he was presenting the whole event. And I felt it was such a strange experience, like in the middle of lockdown and all these people with masks. And at the same time, I was like out of the house. It was just so exciting.
I can just imagine that.
Well, a backstage ritual? Not really. It depends really on the job or the character or the story. Because if I'm expected to go on straight after the interval, I might need to get my wig ready and get my costume ready. And so then I'd struggle to focus. I can't really just sit down and relax. I can't really kind of muck around there. But usually, if I can have a break in the interval, I will take Oscar, my dog, out for a wee. Have a cup of tea there and just have some calm. But he's a really good boy. He always waits for me. He always waits. Well, Lips and Lollipops was a definitely theatre show, and they are the first deaf-led theatre company. Before I worked with them, I'd worked with lots of hearing children's companies, and I'd really struggled or been quite frustrated in having to teach them about deaf awareness the whole time and how to work with a character. And it's just, from the beginning, you're acting, but at the same time, you're having to educate, and it feels like there's a lot of extra responsibility there. So when I went to the Definitely Theatre, I couldn't believe it. The director, Paula Garfield, was deaf. Everyone was signing, and I was just like really excited to be in a space where I felt like I'm really in that space, really accepted. Me as a deaf person, I was fully there. And when I thought about it, as a deaf person who's bilingual, a lot of the time you're in the hearing world, you're just kind of fitting in. Whereas there, I felt fully accepted as me. There was no extra pressure on myself. I could see what was going on. I could understand, and that was really exciting. And to be in that process with everyone signing, it was so freeing. And the interpreters were there for the hearing people, which was a complete reversal from my experience before that. The interpreters weren't for me. The interpreters were for the hearing actors. And that was just amazing. And it felt so freeing to be in that space because you could just give creative ideas. You didn't have to wait for information. You didn't have to explain or educate. You could just switch off and do your job to act. It was brilliant.
Yes, that sounds amazing. I think a lot of people don't think about a deaf actor having this additional responsibility. You have to do deaf awareness training. You have to do script translation on your own. Everything on your own, really. These are extra jobs, so you're kind of doing double, triple the work, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think people don't realise, and us as deaf actors, we have to be patient and we have to... It's different if you're a disabled actor, you have barriers, but you speak the same language as the rest of the cast. Whereas you both speak English, you can connect. You might have one arm, you can connect, you can have a conversation. But for the deaf actors, it's much harder to connect because language becomes a barrier. So then it means that, what can we do if the whole world becomes a clash? We need people like myself and you and deaf people who have open minds to educate a healthy and loving way. Because people don't realise they're naive to it. They don't understand. They don't know how they're communicating. So we have to gently coax it out of them and say, yes, you can communicate. We are experienced, we know what the barriers are and we know how to reduce them. Hearing people often don't know how to lose those barriers and how to take those barriers off.
Absolutely.
They'd say, oh, I can? And you're like, yes, you can. And I think that's quite different for us as deaf actors to have that extra responsibility and of our identity and our language and also our emotional experience of that. That's hard.
Yes.
And how do we feel, you know? How do we get to feel?
Absolutely, yes. I graduated from Royal Conservatoire Scotland and my cohort were deaf and all the lecturers were hearing, apart from 2, and that was fine. But when I joined the real world of acting, it was a completely different experience. In the interval, I'd need an interpreter or I'd just be on my own. It was hard, and yes, I can lip read. But if I have to rely on that whilst everyone is talking, it's exhausting and I can't do my job properly. People don't realise that, you're right.
It's stressful. Because we're always on, our eyes are always watching. And they never get a break. That's why when we have big ensemble rehearsals, I let everyone know. I make sure everyone knows that if I'm sat and I'm fidgeting or I'm looking around, it's not, or I'm not looking at you, it's not that I'm not concentrating, I just need an eye break. And then I'll come back. And I have to do that. Otherwise, I don't want them to think I'm being rude or I'm not watching or I'm not interested, because that's not true. But if I ask for too many breaks...
You just froze for a second there. You were talking about the importance of giving your eyes a break.
Yes, exactly. I feel like if I keep asking for a break, or 10-minute break, all the rest of the company are going to be thinking, I'm annoyed at that. Deaf people are hard to work with, but that they don't understand why. So that's why I have to meet them halfway. That means that the ensemble can carry on, and my 2 interpreters, they understand why I'm looking around, or I'm not being difficult, but they understand. And we're working together, and they can inform the director as well to explain. You know, it's not that I'm being rude or I'm not concentrating. I don't want them to think that deaf people are rude. I can't say for everybody and all deaf actors, but I can say for me, I can let them know, you know, I fidget a lot and I'll be looking around because I can't sit still for too long because I'm just staring at the 2 interpreters. Like, hearing people can look at who's speaking, and they look at a different place and they look at a different place. And then they'll be speaking themselves. But for us, we have to just stare at those 2 people, and it's hard work. My eyes. Well, the audition process for the RSC, well, there were a lot of people going for the role. So it could have been anyone. Anyone would have been lucky to get the role. And it could have gone to anyone. We didn't know what the director was looking for. We didn't know the director's vision. We didn't know the specifics from the play. We didn't know who they'd cast already. You never know. And of course I was a bit like, the audition. I was really excited to get an audition. But at the same time, I was thinking, right, what do they need from me? And I was also working that week, so I had to try and fit in audition prep in between. I didn't have much time, and this was a big job, a lot of preparation of the play. It was quite stressful. But I thought, I must do this. And I'm going to work really, really hard on that and to understand the play, because I'd never seen the play before. Troilus and Cressida, I didn't know it. I'd never heard of the character Cassandra. So I had to really study the play and think of the family and the characters, and think of that character, specifically Cassandra, and think about her frustrations. Why? So initially I was thinking about mental health, and I was like, well, why is she a deaf character? I need to think of the vision. I need to take off my actress hat and almost put on my director's hat and really think about, if I was directing this character, if I was directing myself, how would I deliver her speech? How would I try to do it? And that's hard. And then, of course, the translation process from Shakespearean English into modern English, into BSL, into on stage, and then into the character. We've got that 4 stages, and that 5th part about the character delivery, it can be so different. For example, how you sign to me or how you sign to somebody else, it reflects your own character.
Of course.
And so how would Cassandra sign? What did they want? But at the same time, I worked really hard. I kind of went into it blind, kind of winging it, hoping it, trying to contribute something to the character. And because there was a lot of deaf actors going for the role, and we all know each other. The deaf world is very small. So after the audition, we all met in a cafe just round the corner. Everyone was like, come here, let's have a chat, let's have a catch up. And I think that it's the experience of the deaf community. It's very small. So everyone was talking about the role, and I just said, look, we can't try and second guess it. We don't know what the company are looking for. We don't know if they want tall or short or old or young or beautiful. We don't know. So good luck to us all. And we all just had to remain positive, really. It was a hard process.
I absolutely agree. And when you found out you got the role, were you shocked? Were you surprised?
I was ecstatic. I did a vlog about it. I did upload a vlog.
Saw that.
I was just so excited. And I told my family, and they were just gobsmacked. Oh my God. All that hard work had paid off. And I really believe it was the hard work. If I hadn't done anything, then my mind was just completely blown. And also, I was like the first one into the audition, which is the worst time ever. I was the first person to the audition panel, and I just thought the pressure, oh my goodness. oh. And then I tried to forget about it and I just did my audition. And then, oh, wow, it was beautiful. It was such a lucky experience. I just feel so lucky to have got this job and to be done the work. And I've just loved that whole experience. It was amazing.
My experience was similar to yours, I think. When I was offered the audition that same week, I was working so hard. I only had 5 days' notice to attend the audition. And my wife and I would have to travel to London. I couldn't prepare for the audition because I had so much work on. And the train took 5 hours and I rehearsed in sign language throughout the whole journey. And everyone on the train was looking at me. I arrived in London and I knew I could only try my best. And it was strange at the audition as you have no idea what they're looking for.
And the best person gets it.
And it should always be about picking the best actor for the role, I think.
Oh, absolutely, that's right. Yeah, the wrong wording there. Not the best. It's more the right person for that role. And that's it.
And as you said, you don't know what they're looking for. And you do really well, but you won't get the job because you don't have the right look, perhaps.
Exactly. And I think that's a really healthy attitude for an actor. We have to think like that. The rejection, we can't take that rejection personally because we don't know why we haven't matched for that role. We have to just accept it and move on. Well, there's different parts of the process. So you have the Shakespearean English, the modern English, BSL, then into BSL on stage, and then the fifth part is about character delivery. So you've got that 5 part of a process. And I think a lot of people don't realise that. And that's hard. And I think it's important for everyone to be aware that deaf actors are going through that process and give us time. We always need more time.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think the hearing public understand the extent of the interpreting process that goes into translating Shakespeare into BSL. Do you?
Like my father himself, actually, he was always like, okay, yeah, Shakespeare, and loves going to the theatre, and always says that actually, when Shakespeare, it's a 3D art. When you see it, then you understand. And I think generally people get the gist of Shakespeare when they're watching. But when there's sign language, then they're watching it, and it can be really powerful, a really moving art. And I think that's really important. A lot of people think Shakespeare is really visual, and I totally believe that. I've been talking to Brian Duffy, the BSL consultant, who is fantastic, and I'd say he's one of the top people to work with. And we were chatting about this in terms of Shakespeare, and we're thinking, wow, actually, when you look at that translation process, and you go from Old English to Modern English to BSL, actually, with the Modern English, that's a bit like the middleman. You can get rid of that step and go straight from Shakespearean English to BSL because it matches. Sometimes you don't need that modern English. It's clearer because you can go from one bit to the other because it's so visual. And when you visualise Shakespearean text, it becomes clear.
I was thinking about when I performed Midsummer Night's Dream as part of the Shakespeare Snapshot series at the Dell. I performed the role of Helena, and William Grint performed the role of Demetrius. It was part of the outdoor work during the last lockdown, and we performed with Evita and Dovrig, and during the rehearsal, Dovrig said to me, "Bea, do you realise that this line means this and this and this?" And I was gobsmacked. Dovrig said, and I agree with him, Shakespeare was absolutely filthy. A filthy person.
Very. Oh, that subtle innuendo.
A hearing person might watch a speech and think Shakespeare's writing is about kissing, but he was actually referring to shagging. But that translated into sign is very graphic.
It's true, absolutely. I think that. Well, Shakespeare wrote a lot of his plays through lockdown, didn't he? So I think he was getting a bit feisty. Filthy. Filthy. My favourite? Oh, wow, my favourite role so far is Cassandra. Oh my God, that role. Let me explain why. So first, she was my first real serious kind of completely different character. Normally I'll play someone ditzy or comedy. But this role was so tragic. She was so frustrated, and that process of working with the director, Greg, and just talking about that. I remember asking him, why is this character deaf? Can you explain to me? It's really important to me why you've picked this role to be deaf. Does she just not understand because she's deaf or what? And Greg was like, no, I really want to show everybody that the value of that language. And because Cassandra, she's trying to explain her prophecies, but everyone's ignoring her. And I could really connect to that growing up, people saying, oh, we'll listen to you later, or we'll explain to you what's happening now later. And so I could really see that. And that helped me build the character as a deaf person. And that was really, really important to have that conversation. And I really appreciated that time with Greg, because it showed that he respected me as an actor and he respected my language. And he was learning himself. And I could really connect from that. And so for the next day after that, I really felt really relieved. I felt really ready to focus on this character. All of these frustrations growing up, all of this history that she has, all these barriers. And now she's trying to explain to everyone the truth of those prophecies. And achieving that was just, I think looking back now, the character herself, she's not a big role, but she's a very important role to the story. Because the messages she has, they kind of pop up throughout the play. And that means that my energy had to kind of burst in. And how I had to build that energy up, oh my God, let me tell you. Before it started, I'd have to be backstage really raring myself up, ready to go. And then I'd have to really focus on the tone and kind of have to switching on and off. That was really hard to build up that energy and to then burst onto the stage. And that's not easy. It's not easy to achieve. And also after, when I came off, sometimes I would have tears, or when at the last scene when I came off and I'd go to the wig room and I'd be there in tears, and all the team there, they all knew it was a regular occurrence. But I'd have all that adrenaline, all that build up on stage. And then I'd have to just run off and just stop it. So for me, that role was just, I was really proud of it. And also being on a mainstream stage and being the first actor in an RSC performance who was deaf, I'm really proud of that. And so I really hold that character really close. And I also really believed in her. And I think that's important for all actors to really believe in the part they're playing. Because if you yourself don't believe, how do you expect the audience to?
Absolutely. I think people think that acting, you just stand on the stage. But actually you've got to find truth and be authentic. It's the truth you've got to find inside to link that to the character. That's what I'm feeling anyway. But I think it's absolutely amazing because I think you've established a route for deaf actors into the RSC. And so now myself and William are in the company.
Definitely. Yeah, more. We want more. I feel like me being on stage opened up the gateways. And it makes me really excited to think about can being an associate artist with the RSC, because I can help encourage more deaf young people. And I did say to Greg before, I was like, one day we need to have a 50-50 deaf and hearing cast.
Yes.
50-50 to show how bilingual theatre can really work and how we can work with people like myself within the creative process, because it must start right from the beginning of that process, from casting, translation, everything. If you're going to achieve that at the start, it means that we can hit the ground running. Well, first, of course, it happens pre-rehearsal, the pre-translation. And I work with a BSL consultant, Brian Duffy. And he's my number one, just to let you all know. He's fantastic. It's top. Brilliant. Work with him really well. And he's really open-minded, and he knows the language, and he's creative, and he's an actor himself. So he kind of is the full package. He knows everything. And so we'd get together and so the RSC would give us some time and give us just an extra bit of time before rehearsal even starts. Because I need to really achieve so much before we even get into the room. Like, hearing actors can arrive and they already have a knowledge of the words. They already know a few things about the script. But for us, we've got to have a base translation prepared. I can't just go straight into it. That's impossible. I need to have something to offer. And that's really important. If I arrive in the room with nothing to offer, then it just drags everything out. So we need to make sure we have that conversation before. And I need to have a starting point. So this will be very different by the time I get to the end of the process. For example, the character and the director will take us in a whole new different direction. And when we're on stage, things will change. But this is just the sort of pre-preparation. Then when we have the whole cast table read-throughs, when everyone will be really pulling apart the script, looking at the words. And that's really interesting for me to kind of really listen more and find out more and explore the script. And then having my separate time to that conversation, I can add all those thoughts into my translation. So my role may be small, but the process is massive. And so having that big process, you always need more time. Just always do. Also, when you're translating, you need to think about the relationships with the other characters. Who are they responding to? Are they deaf? Are they hearing? What is their status? There's so many different parts to that. How do I deliver this line to that character? Because it may be different if I'm delivering to a different character or a different person. It all depends. The delivery will change. Maybe I'm really direct to one character and I'm a bit softer to somebody else, or so emotional. And that will all impact the translation. And it's the same with all actors' skills. The philosophy behind it is the same, but the translation will change too, as well as the delivery. If I'm angry, I might be signing like this. Or the Pacific signs might be different. So if I am signing to somebody else, it might be a different translation. It might be less signs, or I might show something in a different way. I mean, that's me nitpicking, for sure. I'm, really delving deep into the character. But when you're working in terms of mainstream theatre, you really have to meet everyone halfway and to find the suitable presentation of the piece. And I'm bilingual. I'm lucky, so I can speak. I'll be responding to different people, but also I'm such a big advocate of having BSL on stage. We need to have BSL on the theatrical map. And lots of people say to me, "Oh, well, you could use your voice," and you're like, well, so what? I can also use sign language, and this is really important.
BSL is very expressive, isn't it? It's got a lot of elements in it.
Exactly. And I really want to have more BSL on stage. And in the end, that will encourage more deaf actors. And then they can choose what they use in their voice or signing. And more choice is really important. Having that choice is much more important than just saying, "Oh, I just use my voice." No, sign language is rich and it can deliver such different things. And the audiences need to be ready to see more sign language on stage. So we have to find a way of meeting halfway. We think about the director's vision and the concept of the show, and maybe there might be an opportunity where there's a beautiful tie for some VV, which is visual vernacular. It's amazing. It's a bit like poetry. It's kind of like an artistic way of signing. Now, I'm not an expert in this area, but some people are absolutely amazing. And that's normal, different people, different skills. But we might work together and create an incredible piece of VV to deliver a speech. And the director might look at it and think, oh, I'm just missing the context. I don't understand what that means. And that always happens. People are like unsure, VV, what does it mean? But it needs to be relatable. And if the audience or the director can't relate to that, I have to think about how I can change that translation. And it's hard and also quite disappointing because you might have created a beautiful piece and you have to think, how can I make that hearing friendly? How can I keep the iconic signs? How can I still keep the truth of our language?
Yes, I understand.
That is tricky. How? But also myself, I know you have to be open-minded to changes. You're working within a team and that's how you achieve. And I really hope that we can influence people in terms of, like, I think back to Taming of the Shrew, where I was the understudy, and wow, that was some experience. Wow. I mean, just even thinking about it gives me chills thinking, wow.
So you're kind of empathising with a hearing actor, actually. Is that the first time you've thought about it like that?
Well, for me, I remember telling them right at the beginning. I said at the start, I was a bit frustrated. I said, well, why is there a hearing actor understudying me? And I made a suggestion that maybe in the future they had like a deaf apprentice, just to give more opportunities to deaf actors so they could come and understudy somebody and learn under my wing, as it were. And I could support them through that. But I'd never had an understudy ever, but also they could understudy me and get that experience, and I could teach the deaf actor through the process, but it would still have deaf roots of a character and keep that consistency through the understudy. Whereas if my understudy is hearing, you kind of lost that. And that's the same when I understudied a hearing character. I mean, how was I going to do that? That was such a big change because of the deaf roots of the character, me as a deaf person. How would that work? And also for the rest of the ensemble, the whole process of how that's working. I can't have a snap translation. And how is everybody else going to respond to the change in that character? That is incredibly difficult. And I achieved it, of course. I'm very proud of myself and everyone for that. But it was hard work. But wow. And also I'm just so pleased with the team. Because in Taming of the Shrew, yes, we only had 1 or 2 days to find that process and to make sure that everybody, all the hearing actors, were comfortable with my delivery, to make sure they were all comfortable at that change of when I was doing an understudy show. How would they know when to respond and when I was signing? And I had to really teach them those iconic family signs, similar to my character, Curtis, in the plays, but also to keep it so I had that deaf roots. And everyone on the team was amazing, absolutely amazing. And they all kind of took it on and they really remembered a lot. And also thinking of myself as a signing character at top of the status, that's fantastic. And they all had to respect me as a character signing. And how would that be shown on stage? And I think everyone enjoyed the process because it was different. But also it showed the audience that you can have a high status deaf character. You can have that process of a deaf actor understudying a hearing person. But that process, of course, you need more time. We're always tight for time, but you definitely need more time for that. And it's not just for me, the deaf actor, it's for the whole ensemble. That process needs more time.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really interesting to hear your experiences and the pre-rehearsal work that you do on translation. I also like to do that, but sometimes you can't focus on a complete translation until you're actually in the show. You can't make that decision, should I speak, should I sign, until you're actually in the room. So with my first character, I decided I would speak for that character, or maybe I would sign with an English grammatical structure because she's at court, she's in a court. So would she allow people to actually sign? We were thinking about the Milan conference that happened in 1880, When the decision was made to stop educating children in sign language, it all became oral, but my character lives on a farm. And thinking about William's character as well, how do I know him? How do we communicate? And how do we communicate with other characters? We make eye contact on stage and we can communicate. It's really interesting.
Wow. I think it starts from school, really. And I think that's where the problem is, because if the language itself is massive, and like you brought up about oralism and the Milan conference, and unfortunately I think that's, it's kind of influenced the oralism and speech therapy.
So I want to clarify about the Milan conference. So we're talking about the 1880 Milan conference. So there were lots of teachers and people involved in education who came together to meet in Milan for the conference. There was about 130, 120 teachers and one deaf teacher, and they decided that deaf children would need to learn through oral education, and that had a direct impact on the advancement of deaf people, and sign language was banned, and that was enacted all over the world, and BSL was banned in education, which had a huge impact.
Exactly, because they believed oralism was the only way that deaf people could achieve in life. And also a lot of deaf people, their mental health declined, there was a lot more barriers, their education was lost. And that was the worst decision ever made. Absolutely the worst decision. So pushing that aside and thinking about now, because of that, it's kind of seeped through to education into the system now. People believe that speaking is important. But actually, I feel that a lot of children become nervous of Shakespeare because the teachers don't know how to deliver that to deaf young people. And I think it's generally everywhere. A lot of hearing children also, they look at Shakespeare and they look at the language and they find it difficult to read. And that's natural. But for deaf young people, they've got all these extra strains and barriers to get through. And so they hate it. When you're forced to do something, you do not want to do it. If you're forced or you feel that pressure, of course you're not going to like it and put those barriers up. So how can we remove those barriers? I think that's through people like you and myself, and how we teach and really coax young people into a welcome environment and make them see that deaf people have an advantage to Shakespeare's language, because we can take that and visualise it artistically, and we can see that. Also, going back to like me and you being on stage, and young people can see that and go, wow, there's deaf people signing on stage. Yes, that's possible. If I had that when I was younger, it would have been very, very different. For me at that time, in terms of role models, there was no one.
Well, you're my role model.
Oh, Willie. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you very much. And that's good. That's really good. And I just wish I had the same. I wish, looking back, it had been possible. But at the same time, I wanted to have more. I want to open up more opportunities for role models now.
I think the first time I saw you, I must have been about 17 or 18. I mean, I wish I'd seen someone like you when I was much younger, like 11 or 12.
I'm old now. I told you I'm old.
But later, I think really mostly it's hearing people.
Naturally. And I think, unfortunately, we are that bit behind. And also talking about opportunities before me growing up, there were very few opportunities, which is why I focused on sport. And I always enjoyed sport, and I wanted to become a professional sports coach. But I always loved sign songs and comedy. I loved that. But there were very few opportunities. Or my dad always said to me, you want to have a go at this? And I'd be like, no, I don't want to. Because I'd always need someone to support me, or I'd be the only deaf person there. And I didn't like that. I didn't want to be, if I was struggling already, I didn't want to be in a big hearing environment where there was lots of people. So I kind of did less and less and less of the creative work and focused on sport. But then this opportunity came up in Reading. And my dad told me that there was a course there in Reading, the University of Reading, which was deaf and hearing integrated. But I was meant to be going to Loughborough University, and I thought, maybe I should have a look at this in Reading. What should I do? So I went to visit Reading, and I was blown away. I thought, okay. And then I thought back to Loughborough, and, I knew this was a really big, important decision for me to just change everything. Changed everything. Absolutely everything. Complete change. And I've never looked back.
Yes, that's where your passion is.
And now I feel like I've just developed so much, and that passion, it's been a really strong passion. If I didn't have that passion, then there'd be a problem. But having passion, anything can come, your resilience is so strong. And you have that fire, you have that energy. And if there's barriers, what can you do? You know, if you've only got a little candle, then it will fade with the barriers and hardships. And so you would take on a different route. But if you've got a really strong fire of a passion, you will make that flame burn.
Exactly, that's the same as me. I did something similar. I was thinking about a medical degree, maybe biochemistry. Then I realised that actually I really hate it. So maybe a sports science or engineering. Then afterwards I thought, let's have a look at theatre. Well, there's a theatre apprentice course. And then I did a drama course that was deaf friendly, and it was amazing. I've never looked back since doing that degree. And talking about Shakespeare for children, I wish Shakespeare had been studied differently in school. And the teacher said, do you want to read the section about the witches in Macbeth? I want to say the Scottish play, but never mind, we're not in a theatre, so I can say Macbeth. So we spoke it, but we didn't sign it. And now looking back, if we'd signed it, it would have been beautiful. And someone once told me that British Sign Language is actually closer to Shakespearean English.
Totally agree. It's like what I was saying earlier. I feel Shakespeare is so visual in the language. And you look at it through the translation, and you've got that four parts of the process, Shakespearean English to modern English. But actually, we can jump that step. We don't need to look at the modern English sometimes, because the language is clearer by looking at visually. And I think a lot of hearing people rely on the words. They rely on the voice and on the sound and on the rhythm. And I understand that. But what I want them to try and understand our process and the way we interpret the language and see the picture clearer from our perspective. And you're right, I think a lot of young people, they love to read. Like me, myself, I would read loads. But I wouldn't know what to do with it. And a lot of people have that attitude that they expect us to not achieve very much, you know. And even being speaking, you might not be able to pronounce the words correctly. But it doesn't mean I don't understand them. I might pronounce the words incorrectly, but I can tell you exactly what it means. And that means I know, you know, I'm intelligent, I can read it, but I think that's where people rely on the spoken word too much. And they need to open their mind and really think about it.
Absolutely. I feel when I speak, I'm different from most hearing people. They're always thinking about the rhythm of the language, and I am a bit pentameter.
Exactly. Yep.
I don't follow that as a deaf person. I'd rather focus on the flow and the pace and the meaning of the language. And that's really interesting as a different perspective.
And I think maybe it's a deaf thing. We can't connect with those specific parts of a hearing person's process. We can't relate to that. But I know what you mean in terms of tone and delivery, but we just can't hear them. So we can't hear those specifics. So how can I connect to that hearing process if I'm not part of the hearing world? And how can we expect that from children as well? Children who are already trying to work out how to live anyway.
Exactly.
So it's about giving them Shakespeare in the most healthy and fun and creative way. "100%. I think that bringing those connections to Shakespeare, and that's all we need to do. People forget that there's so many connections there. They just think about the words themselves, but they connect to a lot of things today, like, you know, the film 10 Things I Hate About You? Well, that's connecting to Taming of the Shrew. And there's lots of things out there. So I feel like a lot of people don't realise that a lot of Shakespeare's plays are connecting to the same themes of today: abuse, love, death, relationships, friendships, killing, lying. There's loads of these themes, and they can be very current. And I think that people just look at Shakespeare's work and think, oh no, it's old-fashioned English, it's historical. But actually opening up our minds more, and you can see how amazing it is. And it's up to us to really encourage them to see Shakespeare, but without the pressure. No pressure, which means it's more enjoyable.
Yes, I think that's right. I think it's about adapting Shakespeare to the modern world. So, for example, the 3 shows you did, As You Like It, Measure for Measure, and Troilus and Cressida, it's about the tools that you're using. It's about including people of colour, about character genders being reversed. That's what we need to keep and carry on to keep things exciting. You can't perform every play in the same way.
Absolutely agree. And talking about those role reversals, you could do that with any play. Like, for example, I'd love to be in King Lear, the Fool. I'd love to change that character in terms of, so if you had King Lear perhaps as a deaf oral character, and perhaps the Fool could be a BSL using character to show such a different levels of status there between the characters. Or you could have a hearing male King Lear and a deaf female Fool, and to see how those relationships work together. I mean, I just love that play. I absolutely love King Lear, and I'd love to play the Fool. There's so much innuendo, and I've studied the play for a long time, and I really feel like to do those reversals. For example, in Taming of the Shrew, it worked there, and it just opens up so many more possibilities. And lots of other plays can do the same. It's easy to achieve.
Absolutely. Well, I've been told that they can hear the 3-minute bell to say the interval's nearly over.
Oh, the alarm!
I've never heard it.
It's flashing. You can see it.
I can see everyone's rushing back to the auditorium.
Haha, exactly. That's why in an emergency, if anything happens, we're always the last to know. Everyone's kind of moving around, rushing out of the building, and we're like, what was a fire? Oh, we'd better leave then.
Exactly. Is it a fire bell or the end of the interval? Who knows? So my final question is, who, dead or alive, would you like to have your next interval drink with, and why?
Well, I have two different ones. In real life, I'd like to meet the team at Marvel or Pixar or Disney. I'd like to have a chat with them and say, you can create superheroes, right? You can create anyone you want. So why don't you create a deaf superhero? If you can create anything, and try and change those perspectives of deaf negativity and more about deaf gain. We want to see that. Because deafness can be quite isolating or negative, but it's because we never get to see our deaf experiences, or if we do, they're always negative. So I want to change that and show that deaf gain. Because Marvel, they can write that character to really show that the achievements of deaf people, so they can be at the top. Also, in terms of Disney, they've got animators, and they can create anything. Anything's possible. So, maybe a deaf mouse, or I don't know, something. But just to create something different. I think that's a problem. There's no true reflection of deafness in society. And I want to create more of that. So that's what I'd like to chat to them about. And in fictional life, I would like to meet the Fool from King Lear. And I'd like to have a chat and just ask them loads of questions and like a character study. Just find out everything I can. So when I'm offered the role, then I'll know exactly how to play it. That's what I'd like.
I like that. That's really nice. I think the one person I'd like to meet is Michelle Yeoh. She's a Chinese Malaysian actress from Southeast Asia. She's an amazing actress and such a role model. Obviously, I'm mixed race, so I feel like I really identify with her.
Oh, I like having that real chat to find out more and to have more conversations like that.
Well, that's why we need diversity, the same as you were saying. We need diverse casting of people performing Shakespeare. I feel the same.
I agree. I think that's why people think of diversity in terms of the hearing world struggling with true reflection. But actually, diversity in the deaf world's the same. You might be Chinese or black or white, and we all have similar barriers and similar communication problems. So it's double.
Absolutely. There's so much diversity with the people in this world, and we need to show that.
Exactly. Double or triple even.
Well, thank you so much for this chat, Charlie. It was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, it's been lovely chatting with you. Lovely.
It was so good to speak to you, and I hope the audience has enjoyed our conversation too. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you'll join us next time, where Hal Chambers will be directing Justin Alderber to the bar and asking him probing questions like, would you like ice with that? Remember, you can catch your favourite episodes again on the Royal Shakespeare Company website.
Interval Drinks is sponsored by Darwin Escapes.